Let's get to the story of the day. I was 7 years old, living in the Chicago suburbs, and had been diagnosed with asthma about a year prior. I was still in the beginning stages of immunotherapy, trying to figure out what I was allergic to, and my asthma was not always under control. I was having trouble one night, and the inhaler was not helping. Later, neither was the prednisone, and my father drove me to the hospital the next morning. He brought me in since I'd been up all night trying to obtain the next breath and was exhausted. I was given something that felt quite similar to the general anesthetic I experienced much later in life prior to 2 surgeries. I'm not sure what I was given. All I remember is feeling shaky and chilly, followed by a warm sensation and the capacity to breathe returning. I was exhausted, and despite the nurse's request that I stay awake, I fell asleep. Later, I discovered that I had ceased breathing entirely. I'm not sure if my heart stopped beating or not. I became aware of the passage of time and entered a dreamy state that evolved into a nightmare from which I could not awaken. As I looked down on someone on bed with doctors operating around them, I had an odd physical experience. It appeared to be evening. I was peaceful, but I desperately wanted to wake up. I was perplexed and hadn't made the cognitive link as to who was in the bed. I wanted to go home, and before I knew it, I was standing outside our sliding door by the kitchen, watching my family eat dinner. I tried to enter and grab their attention, but they didn't appear to notice me. This was terrifying. I roamed around trying to figure out where I was and how to get out, while feeling calm and unconnected. My consciousness was exactly where it is now as I typed this. I met others at some point, and we were in this dark emptiness. Assume you're roaming around a vast dark room, meeting other individuals along the way, and we're all trying to figure out what occurred and why we're all here. That's all I recall from this phase of the encounter. There was a light some distance away, and I eventually found myself becoming a part of it, but I desperately wanted to find a method to bring the others with me as I was drifting away from them. I don't recall a specific tunnel, but the movie Contact would later become one of my favorites, and the sequence of Jodie Foster's mystical voyage sounded extremely comparable to how I felt at the time. When I saw the movie, it reminded me of something I'd seen before. There was a strong feeling of love in the light. I'd arrived home and was greeted warmly. It was a powerful feeling, love and complete acceptance towards me, in me and through me. I had returned home. The emotion is so strong that I don't know how to express it. I desperately wanted to return and bring the others here. I wish you could sense it. I wish my words could convey how I felt. As I type this, I can feel it all over again. Simply put, love. From now on, any sense of time just does not work the same way it did there. Time is non-existent. I could sense a presence of some type, possibly with other beings. I felt a connection with them, and there was this bizarre introduction in a strange language where some part of me was communicating but not directly from me. This was probably as much an introduction for me as it was for them. I had the impression that there was a lot of information about previous lives that had led me to this one and where I was now. I recall a review of everything, more than I can currently comprehend or articulate. But at some time, I was in this life, and specific sections of it were being played for me. Only I was reliving those events with total clarity, both from my perspective and the perspective of anybody else involved. This was my words, thoughts, and actions all over again, but from every possible angle at the same moment. It was really humbling, and it's something I try to remember in my interactions with others today. However, when I think about it, it's so difficult to put the ego aside and do the right thing, and I have a feeling the next life review will be just as humbling, if not more so. I feel like we're confined here, whereas things were so much clearer over there. There was just an instantaneous awareness about everything. My feelings were considerably more powerful, and my conscious awareness could jump to any location in a moment. At one point, I encountered a person or entity with a feminine energy, but she was a guide, similar to going to a counselor, except with complete and instant comprehension and experience, rather than just words or speech. I had to choose between starting again in another lifetime and continuing on this one. I was warned that if I continued in this life, I might not reach my full potential and that it could be wiser to start again in another. This existence, I was warned, would be exceedingly lonely. I was shown scenes from my future life to assist me make a decision. These were times when I needed to make a decision, but wasn't sure which path to choose. I'd also state that I felt these were decisions where there weren't many possibilities and that I was hoping for better ones. There was a sense of tranquility in each instance when I thought, this is right. This is the correct course of action. These items were initially shown to me on a screen, yet it felt as though I was truly present in experiencing them. I was shown my career path, and I recall meeting people who'd been here and done similar things. They were ecstatic about it, extremely positive. I was shown where I reside now. Both the house and the surrounding area, the tiny towns, and the overall vibe of the area. Looking back, there's more information that I know how to convey, and I've already written about my NDE, and it never feels complete. I was shown certain problems that I would face in my life, and I got the impression that much of my life was chosen by me and others before arriving here in the first place in this existence. I'm quite confident my location and asthma were picked to assist me in accomplishing what I set out to do in this life, but specifics are escaping me at this time owing to the lack of clarity here. It's difficult to discuss and a little perplexing. I recall being in a building that resembled the Space Needle in Seattle. Before I was born, my parents lived there for a few years. Throughout this event, I recall asking my guide specific questions to help me make my decision. Starting anew in another life seemed like a wild card, and despite the problems I was presented with, my relationship to the people in my life was strong enough to keep me here, even though I was left with the impression that it would be preferable to start over. I recall inquiring about the loneliness and wondering if I'd ever meet someone as a life partner, and then being shown this woman with long blonde hair, and we were on a plane together, flying somewhere. I had the impression that it was all worth it, and I looked at her and some of the other passengers on the plane, then out the window at a bright light coming up from the clouds we were flying above, similar to a sunrise. I have no idea who this woman is and have tried numerous times to guess. I've reached a place in my life where I'm not going to attempt to force it. I'm simply going to wait and see. When I returned here, I was immediately conscious of the limitations of my earthly body and realized it was late at night. I was intubated and unable to communicate, and the nurse missed my telepathic communication, which occurred so readily when I was away. I wanted to go back, but I knew this was what I had chosen and that it was perfect. It took a few days for me to leave the hospital and come home. I recall coming home and entering my bedroom. The sun shone through the window, and I felt quite optimistic about the future, hopeful and glad to be here. I was on a high. It was probably 3 or 4 years later. I was always conscious of the event, but I had not altered in any manner. I was coming home from school with a childhood friend when he remarked, quite unexpectedly, "What happened to you while you were away?" He preferred the old me. I suppose I'd become more serious, perhaps more aware of a few things. I guess I used to be a lot more careless and, as a result, a lot more fun. This was the first time someone told me that they had observed a shift in my behavior, and possibly the only occasion I can recall. I've tried to tell my family, close friends and girlfriends about this event throughout the years, but their reactions have taught me to keep quiet. After all, it's a wild story, and I'm sure if I hadn't witnessed it for myself, I'd have a hard time believing it. Now I merely write about it here and there over the years, hoping that it can help someone who's trying to sort out a near-death experience they recently had, or that they gain something else out of it. It took me 30 years to meet someone who would accept what I shared with them, and it really aided me. We became excellent friends and tried to visit each other at least once a year, despite the fact that we lived in different states. In 2016, she passed away. I met her in a happy dream the night before she went. It was like, you were right. And we shared the experience in a tough-to-express sense, but it seemed like we were back there again, and it was fantastic. I now attend the occasional IANDS meeting and spend as much time outside as I can, but I'm still looking forward, wondering, waiting, and hoping.